My name is Lucas Meyer. I'm a film student who is studying gentrification in Vancouver's downtown Eastside. What I want to know is how many poor people are going to be displaced by rising rents, and what are the consequences going to be? This video contains highlights of a very interesting interview that I had with Geoffrey Howes, spokesperson for the York Rooms Hotel. The York has been a home for poor people for many years because of its low rent. But Pivot Legal Society and many downtown Eastside activists claim that the rents are rising way beyond what poor people can afford, and that welfare recipients in particular are being harassed, intimidated, and evicted from the building. Geoffrey Howes denies this. He claims that a drug problem was really responsible for people being driven out of the building.
The drug dealing has become sort of quite rampant. We had already sort of had to replace, and we lost 2 caretakers as a result of this. And what it does is it sort of, other than being illegal, it just creates so much upheaval within the building that the people who are trying to actually stay clear of drugs, they may be drug addicts themselves, but they're trying to change their lifestyle. They can't get any peace.
In part 2 of the video, Mr. Howes described the rental rates at the York Hotel.
So the pre-existing rooms are being rented up to $475. So once we've renovated the rooms, we'll rent them in the $500 to $575 kind of range, depending on I think we do have a couple. There's 2 that are $600 because they're the bigger rooms on the back side. But in general, between $5 and $575. Depending on whether they're furnished or not, because we find that some people want furnished and some people don't. So it might be $525 if it's not, and an extra $50 if it's furnished.
So it appears that rooms are being renovated and rented out between $500 and $600 a month, well beyond what a welfare person can afford. And near the end of part 3 of the interview, Mr. Howes made this surprising comment.
Rate, and most of our buildings are now aimed at the working poor or people on low income. Because I have to tell you, from a business standpoint, renting to welfare individuals is truly a lose-lose, because not only do the rooms get destroyed, but there is no revenue to do any kind of repairs and maintenance, and that's not a business model that we're interested in.
So he probably doesn't want to rent to welfare people anyway. And part 3 of the interview had some other big surprises too. How do you make money?
The question around our business model is that we actually use the ground floor of most of our SROs for a retail tenant. And when we buy a building like this one, and we put a retail tenant on the main floor, in this case it's the restaurant down below, as you know, that is one of the primary revenue sources for the building. So if you look at the number of rooms and the size of the building and the relative cost of the building, there is an economic model that works. But for us, it works primarily because we actually invest in the building and in putting retail in the ground floor, because there's quite significant additional income that comes from the ground floor tenant that helps to pay some of the additional costs associated with virtually all of our properties. We own the Lotus Hotel, the American Hotel, this building across the street, 90 Alexander, where they're doing the filming, that's our building. So the retail tenant supports the tenants above.
There have been regular protests at the restaurant in front of the York. Protesters claim that high-end restaurants and businesses increase gentrification. Could they have a point? I got another surprise when I suggested that the protesters were concerned about certain populations, i.e. welfare people, being forced out.
No, it's a total fact.
Yeah.
But the reality is that that's the responsibility of governments to deal with that. It's a social problem, right? The government determines that people on welfare need to live in this particular area, the downtown east side. We believe it just creates a ghetto. So I'm diametrically opposed to that, and it's now being referred to as a ghetto, and it looks more like a ghetto every day. Governments have a responsibility either to build housing or support individuals if they need support, or to put welfare rates up.
So did I hear right, Geoffrey Howes, a businessman, saying that it's government's responsibility to step in and do something? I must say that I agree. And I really appreciate that Geoffrey Howes' openness and candor in giving this interview. However, I'm more concerned than ever that large numbers, perhaps even thousands of people on welfare and disability could be displaced by rising rents. We need to find out how bad the situation is and what governments are doing to fix it. Stay tuned.